I never thought I'd be the kind of mother who snooped through her daughter's boyfriend's things. But there I was, standing in our guest room, holding a leather glove that would change everything I thought I knew about the man my daughter was going to marry. Let me start from the beginning. My daughter Emma had always been unlucky in love. Throughout high school and college, she dated boys who were either too immature, too selfish, or just plain wrong for her. There was Jake, who forgot her birthday 3 years in a row. Then came Marcus, who borrowed money and never paid it back. And don't even get me started on Tyler, who actually asked her to split the bill on their anniversary dinner. Each heartbreak crushed me almost as much as it crushed her. I'd hold her while she cried, make her favorite soup, and wonder when she'd finally meet someone who deserved her kindness and beauty. Emma was special. She volunteered at animal shelters, always remembered everyone's birthdays, and had this infectious laugh that could light up any room. She deserved the world. Then, 2 years ago, she met Daniel. I'll never forget the day she brought him home for the first time. It was a Sunday afternoon in October, and the leaves were turning brilliant shades of orange and gold. Emma walked through the door with this glow about her, and behind her stood a tall man with warm brown eyes and an easy smile. "Mom, this is Daniel," she said, and I could hear the happiness in her voice. Daniel shook my hand firmly and looked me straight in the eye. "Mrs. Patterson, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Emma talks about you constantly." He handed me a bouquet of sunflowers. "She mentioned these were your favorite." My heart melted right there. What kind of man remembers flowers? Over the next few months, Daniel proved himself time and time again. He showed up when he said he would. He called Emma just to hear about her day. When her car broke down at midnight, he drove across town to help her without a single complaint. He was a pediatric nurse, which told me everything about his character. Anyone who could comfort scared children and worried parents for a living had to have a good heart. My husband Robert liked him too, which was saying something. Robert was protective of Emma, always had been. But after their first conversation about baseball, Robert pulled me aside and whispered, "This one's different, Claire. This one's a keeper." Emma flourished with Daniel. She smiled more, worried less, and seemed to walk with more confidence. They moved in together after a year, and I watched my daughter build a life with someone who truly cherished her. Then came the engagement. Daniel proposed last spring at the Botanical Gardens where they'd had their first date. He'd arranged for a violinist to play Emma's favorite song, and he got down on one knee surrounded by blooming roses. She called me immediately afterward, sobbing with joy, and I cried right along with her. Finally, my baby girl had found her person. The wedding was planned for December, just after Christmas. Emma wanted a winter wonderland theme with white roses and twinkling lights. She'd been planning every detail for months, and her excitement was contagious. Daniel was just as involved, proving once again that he wasn't like other men. He cared about napkin colors and seating arrangements because he cared about making Emma happy. Everything was perfect. Too perfect, maybe, because that's when things started to feel strange. It began with small things. Daniel would get phone calls and step outside to take them. His smile would fade when he looked at his phone screen. Once, I walked into the kitchen and found him staring out the window with such a sad expression that it startled me. When he noticed me, the sadness vanished instantly, replaced by his usual warm smile. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Of course," he said quickly. "Just tired from work. But I'm a mother. We notice things." The Thursday before Thanksgiving, Emma called me in tears. Not sad tears, but frustrated ones. "Daniel's been acting so weird, Mom," she said. "He's distracted all the time. Yesterday, I asked him about the honeymoon, and he just stared at me like he forgot we were even getting married. When I mentioned it, he apologized and said work was stressful, but I don't know. Something feels off." My stomach knotted with worry. "Do you think he's having second thoughts?" "I don't know what to think," she admitted. "He says he loves me, and I believe him, but there's something he's not telling me.
I can feel it.
We talked for over an hour, and I did my best to reassure her. Maybe it really was just work stress. Maybe the wedding pressure was getting to him. Maybe we were both overthinking things. But doubt had planted itself in my mind, and it grew roots fast. Thanksgiving came, and Daniel joined us for dinner. He was charming as always, complimenting my cooking and helping Robert set up the extra table. But I watched him carefully now, looking for cracks in the facade. I saw him check his phone 3 times during dinner. I noticed how he'd drift away from conversations, his mind clearly somewhere else. After dinner, while Emma and Robert were loading the dishwasher, I found Daniel standing alone on our back porch. The November air was cold, and he hadn't even grabbed a jacket. "Daniel!" I stepped outside.
You'll freeze out here. He turned, and for just a moment, I saw real pain in his eyes before he masked it.
"Sorry, Mrs. Patterson. Just needed some air." I moved closer. "Is everything all right? And please, be honest with me." He opened his mouth, then closed it. His jaw tensed. "Everything's fine. I promise." But it wasn't fine. I knew it wasn't fine. That night, after they left, I told Robert about my concerns. "You're worrying too much," he said, ever the optimist. "Cold feet before a wedding is normal." "This isn't cold feet," I insisted. "This is something else."
Like what?
I didn't have an answer. I just had a terrible feeling in my gut that wouldn't go away. The following week, Emma asked if Daniel could stay in our guest room for a few days. Their apartment was being fumigated, and they couldn't be there. Emma would stay with her friend Sarah, and Daniel would stay with us. "Of course," I said, though part of me wondered if this was an opportunity. An opportunity for what? I wasn't sure yet. Daniel arrived on Monday evening with a small suitcase and a garment bag. He thanked us profusely for letting him stay and immediately offered to cook dinner for us. We spent a pleasant evening together, and for a while, my worries seemed silly. This was Daniel, the man who loved my daughter. What was I so afraid of? But that night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Daniel was hiding something. I could feel it in my bones. The next morning, Daniel left early for his shift at the hospital. Robert had already gone to work. I was alone in the house, and my mind kept drifting to the guest room. I told myself not to do it. Privacy was important. Trust was important. But Emma's heartbroken voice on the phone echoed in my memory. "Something feels off, Mom." Before I could talk myself out of it, I walked to the guest room and opened the door. The room was neat. Daniel had made the bed with perfect hospital corners and folded his clothes in the dresser. His suitcase sat in the corner, still partially unpacked. I felt like a criminal as I approached it, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What was I even looking for? Evidence of another woman? Some secret addiction? I didn't know. I opened the suitcase carefully, my hands trembling. Inside were regular things: more clothes, toiletries, a book about emergency medicine. Nothing suspicious. I was about to close it when I noticed something tucked into the side pocket. A single leather glove. It was brown, worn but well-maintained, and clearly old. Men don't usually carry around one glove, especially not a vintage one like this. Curious, I picked it up. The leather was soft, molded by years of wear. It was heavier than I expected. I turned it over, examining it, and that's when I felt something inside. The lining wasn't flat. There was something between the leather exterior and the silk interior. My fingers found a small opening where the stitching had come loose near the wrist. I hesitated for only a second before reaching inside. I pulled out a photograph. It was old, the edges worn and slightly yellowed. The image showed a young boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, standing next to a man who had to be his father. They were both smiling, the boy holding up a baseball like a trophy. But it was what I noticed next that made my blood run cold. The boy was Daniel. I recognized those eyes, that smile. And the man standing next to him was wearing the same leather glove I held in my hands. But there was more inside the glove. I pulled out another photograph, then another. Each one showed Daniel at different ages with the same man, building a snowman, sitting at a baseball game, standing in front of a Christmas tree. Then I found the letter. It was written on lined paper in careful handwriting, folded small to fit inside the glove. My hands shook as I unfolded it.
Daniel, it began.
If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for your wedding, son. I'm sorry for a lot of things. This glove was given to me by my father, and he got it from his father before him. It survived 3 generations of Patterson men, and I wanted you to have it. Wear it on your wedding day, and know that I'm with you. I love you more than words can say. I'm so proud of the man you've become. Your father, Michael Patterson. I had to read it twice before the words made sense. Then I pulled out the last item in the glove, a death certificate. Michael James Patterson. Date of death: 4 months ago. I sank onto the bed, the glove and its contents spread around me. Daniel's father had died. Recently. And he hadn't told anyone. Not Emma. Not us. He'd been carrying this grief alone, hidden in a glove, pushing through wedding plans and family dinners while his heart was breaking. Suddenly, everything made sense. The distracted looks, the sadness he tried to hide, the phone calls he took outside. He wasn't having second thoughts about Emma. He was drowning in grief and trying to keep everyone from seeing. But why? Why wouldn't he tell us? I carefully put everything back inside the glove and returned it to the suitcase. Then I sat in the guest room and waited for Daniel to come home. He arrived around 6 that evening, looking exhausted. When he saw me sitting on the guest bed, he froze. Mrs. Patterson? Is everything okay? I held up the glove. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have gone through your things. But Daniel, we need to talk. The color drained from his face. He looked at the glove, then at me, and I saw his carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. He sat down heavily in the chair across from me, his head in his hands.
I was going to tell her, he said quietly.
I didn't know how.
Why don't you start by telling me?
And he did. The words poured out like he'd been holding them back for too long. His father had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer last year, right around the time Daniel met Emma. Michael had made Daniel promise not to tell Emma, saying he didn't want Daniel's new relationship overshadowed by death. He wanted me to be happy, Daniel said, his voice breaking. He said Emma sounded perfect, and he didn't want his illness to scare her away or make her feel obligated to stay with me out of pity. For months, Daniel had balanced visiting his dying father in another state while building a life with Emma. Michael had lived just long enough to see them get engaged. He died 2 weeks later.
I should have told her then, Daniel continued.
But we were so happy, and the wedding planning started, and she was so excited. Every time I tried to bring it up, I'd see her smile, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't put that sadness in her eyes.
So you carried it alone, I said softly.
He nodded, tears streaming down his face. Dad left me this glove. It was his father's, and his grandfather's before that. He wanted me to wear it on my wedding day so he could be there with me. But every time I look at it, Mrs. Patterson, I miss him so much. And I feel like such a fraud, planning this beautiful wedding when I'm falling apart inside. My heart broke for him. This wonderful man who'd been so worried about Emma's happiness that he'd ignored his own pain. This man who'd suffered alone rather than burden the people he loved.
Daniel, I said firmly, moving to sit next to him.
You need to tell Emma. Today. Right now. She's going to be so angry that I kept this from her. She might be, I admitted. But she loves you. And she deserves to know what you're going through so she can support you. That's what partners do.
He looked at me with red, swollen eyes.
What if she thinks I'm damaged? What if she realizes I'm not the man she thought I was? Daniel, grief doesn't make you damaged. It makes you human. And hiding it doesn't make you weak. It makes you someone who loves deeply enough to want to protect others from pain. But you can't marry my daughter with this secret between you. She needs to know all of you, including the parts that hurt. He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're right. I know you're right. I called Emma and asked her to come over. When she arrived 20 minutes later, her face filled with worry, I left them alone in the guest room and went to find Robert. What's going on? He asked when he saw my expression. I told him everything. We sat together on the couch, listening to the low murmur of voices from the guest room, occasionally interrupted by Emma's sobs. Robert held my hand, and we waited. An hour later, Emma emerged with puffy eyes and mascara running down her cheeks. But she was holding Daniel's hand, and there was something fierce and determined in her expression. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked me. Why did you wait? Because it wasn't my story to tell, I said. Daniel needed to be the one to share it with you. Emma nodded, understanding. She looked at Daniel, who stood beside her looking vulnerable and exhausted, and squeezed his hand. We're postponing the wedding, she announced. My heart sank. Emma! Not canceling, she clarified quickly. Postponing. Daniel needs time to grieve properly. We both do. We're going to take a few months, and then we'll get married when we're both ready. When we can celebrate without shadows hanging over us. I looked at Daniel. He was staring at Emma like she'd just given him the greatest gift in the world. Are you sure? He asked her quietly. We've already paid deposits, sent invitations. I don't care about any of that, Emma said. Daniel, I fell in love with you. Not some perfect version of you that never feels pain or sadness. I want all of you, the happy parts and the broken parts and everything in between. We're supposed to be a team. So let me be on your team. He pulled her into his arms, and she held him while he finally, truly broke down. Years of held-back grief poured out of him, and Emma just held on tighter, whispering that she loved him, that it was okay, that she was there. Robert and I left them alone and went to the kitchen. He made coffee while I sat at the table, processing everything that had happened. You did good, Robert said, setting a mug in front of me. I invaded his privacy, I pointed out. You saved their relationship, he countered. If he'd kept carrying that alone, it would have poisoned everything eventually. Now they have a chance to face it together. He was right. Sometimes love means knowing when to step in, even when it's uncomfortable. The next few months were hard but healing. Emma and Daniel went to grief counseling together. Emma met Daniel's mother, who was grateful to finally meet the woman who'd brought light back into her son's eyes. They visited Michael's grave together, and Emma laid flowers there. Daniel told us stories about his father, how Michael had taught him to tie his shoes, to ride a bike, to be kind even when it was hard. We laughed and cried and remembered a man none of us except Daniel had known, but who'd clearly been wonderful. The leather glove sat on Daniel's dresser now, no longer hidden. Sometimes I'd see him pick it up, running his fingers over the worn leather, and I knew he was talking to his father in his heart. They rescheduled the wedding for June, 6 months after the original date. It was beautiful. Emma wore white lace, and Daniel wore a sharp navy suit. And on his left hand, he wore a worn brown leather glove that had belonged to his father, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather. During the ceremony, when the officiant talked about family and legacy, Daniel's voice was steady and clear. My father taught me that love means showing up, even when it's hard. It means being honest, even when the truth is painful. It means letting people help carry your burdens because that's what family does. He looked at Emma, then at us, his eyes bright with tears and gratitude. I'm so blessed to be joining a family that understands that. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. At the reception, during the father-daughter dance, Robert led Emma onto the floor. But halfway through the song, Emma beckoned Daniel over. She took his hand and Robert's hand and brought them together. You're not dancing alone anymore, she told Daniel.
None of us are.
The three of them danced together, and I watched from my seat, my heart so full it hurt. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, Daniel found me by the dessert table.
Mrs. Patterson, he said, then corrected himself with a smile.
Claire, I need to thank you. For snooping through your suitcase? I asked with a small laugh. For caring enough to snoop, he said seriously. For pushing me to be honest. For giving Emma a model of what a strong, loving mother looks like. My dad would have loved you.
He would have loved all of this.
He held up his gloved hand. He's here with me today.
Because of you.
I hugged him tight. You're a good man, Daniel. Your father knew it, and I know it, and Emma definitely knows it. I'm so glad you're part of our family. Me too, he whispered. As I watched him walk back to Emma, I thought about that morning months ago when I'd stood in the guest room, holding a mysterious glove. I'd expected to find secrets that would break my daughter's heart. Instead, I'd found a man with a broken heart of his own, trying so hard to protect everyone else that he'd forgotten to protect himself. Sometimes the things we hide aren't evidence of betrayal or bad character. Sometimes they're evidence of pain we don't know how to share, of grief we carry alone because we don't want to burden others. And sometimes, the greatest gift we can give someone is permission to stop hiding, to be fully seen, and to be loved anyway. Emma and Daniel left the reception in a shower of flower petals and good wishes. Emma's white dress glowed in the evening light, and Daniel's gloved hand held hers tight. They were starting their life together with honesty, with love, and with the knowledge that they could face anything as long as they faced it together. I'd been so happy when my daughter finally found a good guy. And even after discovering what was inside that glove, grief, loss, old photographs, and a father's final blessing, I was even happier. Because I'd discovered that Daniel wasn't just a good guy. He was the right guy. And sometimes, that makes all the difference. I carefully put everything back inside the glove and returned it to the suitcase. My mind raced. Should I tell Emma immediately? Confront Daniel? Pretend I never saw anything? No. This was Daniel's truth to tell, but he needed a push. I decided to wait for him in the guest room. The hours crawled by.
I sat on the edge of the bed, the glove now back in the suitcase, rehearsing what I would say.
Around 6 o'clock, I heard the front door open. Mrs. Patterson? I'm home. Daniel's voice carried up the stairs, warm and friendly as always. Up here, Daniel, I called, my voice steadier than I felt. His footsteps climbed the stairs, each one making my heart pound harder. When he appeared in the doorway of the guest room, still in his scrubs, exhaustion written across his face, he froze. Mrs. Patterson? Is everything okay? His eyes darted around the room, landing on me sitting on his bed. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I stood and walked to his suitcase. His face went pale as I unzipped it and pulled out the leather glove. No, he whispered, backing up a step. Please, Sit down, Daniel. My voice was firm but not unkind.
Mrs. Patterson, I can explain. His voice cracked.
Then explain. I held up the glove between us like evidence in a trial.
He sank into the chair, his hands covering his face.
For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear him trying to control his breathing, fighting tears. I had no right to go through your things, I said finally. But I'm glad I did. His head snapped up. You read it.
The letter.
I read it. I saw the photographs. The death certificate. I paused. Michael James Patterson. Your father died 4 months ago, and you've told no one. A sound escaped him, half sob, half gasp, and suddenly he was 17 instead of 32, a boy who'd lost his father and didn't know how to carry that weight.
I was going to tell her, he said, his voice barely above a whisper.
I swear, I was going to tell Emma. I couldn't find the right time. And then it had been too long, and how do you tell someone you've been lying to them for months?
You haven't been lying.
Yes, I have. He stood abruptly, pacing. Every time she asked if I was okay. Every time your family invited me over and asked about my parents. Every time someone asked if my family was coming to the wedding. I lied.
I smiled and changed the subject and lied.
Daniel, do you know what it's like? His voice rose, all the emotion he'd been suppressing finally erupting. To watch the woman you love plan the happiest day of her life while you're dying inside? To know your father is being eaten alive by cancer and you can't tell anyone because he made you promise? To hold your father's hand while he takes his last breath and then go home and pretend everything is fine because you don't want to be a burden. Tears streamed down his face now, and he made no effort to hide them. He was supposed to walk me down the aisle, Daniel continued, his voice breaking.
That's what he said. When you get married, son, I'll be right there beside you.
But he wasn't there. He won't be there. And I've been so angry at him for leaving, and so guilty for being angry, and so terrified that Emma will see what a mess I am and realize she's making a mistake. My heart shattered for him. I crossed the room and pulled him into my arms. He resisted for only a moment before collapsing against me, sobbing into my shoulder like the motherless boy he now was. You're not a mess, I said firmly, holding him tight. You're grieving.
There's a difference.
Emma deserves better than this. Better than me drowning in grief on what should be the happiest time of our lives. I pulled back, holding him by the shoulders, and looked him straight in the eye. Daniel Patterson, you listen to me. Emma doesn't want perfect. She wants you. All of you. The happy parts and the sad parts and everything in between. But, no buts. You need to tell her. Today. Right now. I picked up the glove and pressed it into his hands. Your father gave you this to carry him with you. Not to carry alone, but to carry forward into your future. A future with Emma. She needs to know about this. About him.
About all of it.
He stared down at the glove, his fingers trembling as they traced the worn leather.
What if she's angry I didn't tell her sooner?
She probably will be. And that's okay. Let her be angry. Let her be sad with you.
Let her help you carry this.
I paused. Because if you don't tell her now, if you walk into that wedding with this secret still between you, it will eat away at your marriage from the inside.
I'm so tired, he whispered.
I'm so tired of pretending.
Then stop pretending.
He looked up at me, this man who loved my daughter enough to hide his pain from her, and something shifted in his expression. Resignation, maybe. Or relief. Will you stay?
When I tell her.
If you want me to. He nodded, and I pulled out my phone. Emma. It's Mom. Can you come over? Right now. I paused, listening to her confused questions. Daniel's here. He needs to talk to you about something important. No, everything's fine. Just, please come. 20 agonizing minutes later, Emma burst through the front door. Mom?
Daniel.
She took the stairs 2 at a time, appearing in the doorway breathless and worried. What's going on? Why do you both look like someone died? She stopped, really seeing us for the first time. Daniel's red eyes. The glove in his hands. My protective stance beside him. Oh God, she breathed. Daniel, what happened? Who died? That simple question, asked with such innocent concern, broke something in him. He held out the glove with shaking hands. My father, he said. My father died 4 months ago. And I never told you. The color drained from Emma's face. She looked at the glove, at Daniel, at me, trying to piece together what she was hearing. Your father, she repeated slowly. You told me he lived in Oregon, that he was a carpenter, that he, understanding dawned in her eyes, followed immediately by hurt. You've been lying to me? Not lying, omitting, hiding. Daniel's voice was raw. Emma, please, let me explain. Explain what? That your father died and you didn't think I deserved to know? That you've been grieving alone while planning our wedding? That you didn't trust me enough to… Her voice broke. How could you keep this from me? Because I love you. The words exploded out of him. Because you were so happy, and I couldn't bear to dim that light. Because my father was dying from the moment I met you, and he made me promise not to let his illness overshadow the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I'm an idiot who thought I could protect you from pain by carrying it all myself. Emma stood frozen, tears spilling down her cheeks. Daniel! His name was Michael, Daniel continued, his words tumbling out now. Michael James Patterson. He was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 2 weeks after our first date. He had months to live, maybe a year if he was lucky. And the first thing he said when I told him about you was, "Don't you dare let my dying ruin your chance at living." He opened the glove, pulling out the photographs with shaking hands. This is him teaching me to play catch. This is us at my first baseball game. This is… His voice broke. This is the last Christmas we had together. He was so weak by then, but he insisted on putting up the tree. Said traditions matter. Emma moved closer, looking at the photos, her anger warring with compassion on her face. I visited him every weekend, Daniel continued. Told you I was at medical conferences or visiting college friends. I held his hand while he got sicker. I was there when he died. And then I came home to you, and you asked how my weekend was, and I said, fine, like I hadn't just lost my whole world. Why? Emma's voice was barely audible. Why didn't you tell me then? Because we'd just gotten engaged. Because you were so excited about the wedding. Because every time I tried to form the words, I'd look at your smile and I couldn't do it. I couldn't be the person who took your joy away. My joy. Emma's voice rose. Daniel, you think I want joy that's built on your suffering? You think I want to be happy while you're falling apart? She moved to him, grabbing his face in her hands. I fell in love with you. Not with some perfect version of you that never hurts. I want the real you. The scared you, the grieving you, the you that's barely holding it together. That's what love means. I thought I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. The words came out harsh, and Emma flinched at her own tone. But she didn't take them back. You were protecting yourself from being vulnerable, from being seen at your worst, from having to ask for help. Daniel opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. After a moment, he nodded. You're right. I was scared, terrified. What if you saw how broken I was and realized you'd made a mistake? The only mistake, Emma said, her voice shaking, would be marrying someone who doesn't trust me with their whole heart. The good and the bad. They stood there, inches apart but miles away, and I held my breath wondering if love would be enough to bridge that gap. Then Daniel did something that surprised all of us. He sank to his knees, still holding the glove, and looked up at Emma with complete, raw honesty on his face. You're right. About all of it. I was protecting myself. I was scared. And I was wrong. He held up the glove. This belonged to my father, and his father, and his grandfather. Dad left it to me with a letter saying he wanted me to wear it on our wedding day, so he could be there with me, even though he's gone. Emma knelt down in front of him, taking the glove in her hands. But Emma, Daniel continued, I can't wear this glove and marry you with this secret between us. I can't start our life together built on a lie, even a well-intentioned one. So I need to ask you something. She waited, tears streaming down her face. Can you forgive me? Can we postpone the wedding and do this right? Can we take time for me to grieve properly, with you beside me instead of in the dark? Can we start over with complete honesty this time? For a long, terrible moment, Emma said nothing. Then she pulled Daniel into her arms, holding him so tight it looked like she'd never let go. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. But Daniel, we're not starting over. We're starting forward. Together. With all our scars and all our truths. No more hiding. He clung to her, and she clung to him, and they cried together in a way they should have been able to months ago. I quietly slipped out of the room, my own tears flowing freely. Behind me, I heard Emma say, Tell me about him. Tell me everything about your father. I want to know the man who raised the man I love. And as I closed the door, I heard Daniel begin to speak, his voice still broken but no longer alone, telling his father's story to the woman who would carry it forward with him. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't protecting someone from pain. It's trusting them enough to share it.